Frank reminds me, please, if there's an acronym up there that I haven't explained, put your hand up or just shout at me, because there is such death by acronyms in the DevFra world that we all fall into that horrible trap. Good morning, everyone. So 3 years into this wonderful project, I am very pleased to present our latest update. I'd love to say it's the final one, but there's still not ink on that paper, but it won't be long, hopefully. So I am going to run through the sort of skim through the project for those that aren't aware of it and haven't heard previous presentations, and then we can perhaps dwell a bit more at the end on role of partners and so on. So the principles of the project, the Evenlode Landscape Recovery Project, it's all about collaboration, and as a group of farmers, that's predominantly farmer collaboration, but of course collaboration with organisations and others working in the catchment. For that bigger picture, rather than just looking down the lens of single farm activities, how can we be bigger and bolder, the whole being greater than the sum of its parts, an important message in this sort of project. And it's not about looking down single issues. We're not just focused on capturing as much carbon as we can, or just solving water quality issues, or flooding, or public engagement. It's everything, and also producing food as well, because that is the primary role of a farmer. How do we establish high quality habitats, but also maintain those existing good quality, make them better, and creating that mosaic to feed that point too. It's not just about single issues or single habitats and mosaics, so that we can optimize the habitat outcomes of the nature-based solutions that we have. And those are the habitats. I won't go into each one, but you can see it's a combination of everything from the downslopes, the wet patches, and the floodplain, and everything in between. Maybe not the best map, apologies, but where you can see the colouring out, those are the parcels that are in as of today, and those are currently being signed up formally now. So if you look up at Morton Marsh, Seasonkirk, the estate, there's 3 tenants there, all the way down to Blenheim and down to FAO Farms at the confluence with the Thames and Church Farm. The original target was the flood zone, and then working up and increasingly looking at opportunities on the downslopes where there's clear surface flow and flow pathways, and opportunities to connect up existing habitats as well. On each of those habitats that we've conceptually sort of proposed at a very high level, we have a prescription, we've called it. It sounds horrible, but we had to call it something, and each habitat is described, and the types of management requirements, the compulsory ones, the preferred, and then how it fits into the implementation plan as well, so including consenting, monitoring, and so not just design and build, but how that will run for 20 odd years. And it was interesting when we were first setting out, we wanted to create a philosophy of this is the outcome we're aiming for, this is what we want to achieve, and that might be 15 species but 15 plant species per square meter in a grassland, or it might have been a certain age structure of trees. But we fell into the trap of actually getting very prescriptive in our into our how we're going to go about doing this, simply because that is kind of what farmers are now used to with the higher tier and countryside stewardship options. So it has become quite prescriptive, quite designed, but we really want to hold on to that philosophy. We are doing this for a certain outcome. We're not going to be the RPA ticking off how many fence posts you put in, or how many staples you've used to hold up that wire. We want it to be a philosophy that gets us to the outcomes, not total prescription. And with that, we're trying to drive this sort of responsibility by the farmers, and so there are incentive structures there to reward best practice. But at the same time, this is a shared goal. So across the whole 3,762 hectares that we've got in across 64 farms, everybody gets the same payment per hectare, regardless of whether you're the one that's planting woodland, or you're the one that's getting more school visits, or you're the one that's doing building more ponds, whatever it might be. Everybody has the same amount across the whole structure. We want to be open with all partners, obviously with the farmers themselves, and how we go about monitoring and working. It's been fraught with complexity, with such a diverse and mixed bag of participants in the project, that we ideally would have been much more consulting and had everybody on a WhatsApp group to co-developing this. But ultimately, we do need to hit certain milestones, and did need to get over the line with certain principles that we've done a lot of work behind the scenes, presented back, done more work, presented back, and that's been an iterative process all the way through, with a number of sort of farmer engagement events through the last year particularly. Skipping through, I'm not going to read each one out, but making sure that we are valuing all the contributions. This is no one organization that's going to take own the whole process. It is very much about a vehicle, a structure to be able to contract out and raise funds and so on, to enable the ultimate goal across those 64 farms. I will move on. So how are we doing that? Through the payment structure of this. The scale of it has enabled us to go into the landscape recovery DEFRA scheme. Landscape recovery is all about, as the name suggests, connecting up across a landscape for a common purpose. So it goes beyond the typical one farm countryside stewardship payments. But a key requirement for going to landscape recovery is this blended finance. So we have to bring in other buyers of those services that we'll be delivering. It's not for government to do all the heavy lifting. And as we all know, the government purse is getting tighter and tighter. And the demand for nature-based solutions is getting ever greater, and the need for them. So the private purse has to start kicking in. So DEFRA are doing a lot of the seed funding, a lot of the risk taking to catalyze these markets. But the sale of ecosystem services will be the fuel that keeps this going. So using the likes of the Woodland Carbon Code, Biodiversity Net Gain, those are existing schemes that can lever money from beneficiaries locally, or the polluter pays in the BNG principle. And then we will engage with markets as they open up, and we will do what we can to enable those markets, particularly natural flood management. So that's been coming about through a lot of work with Network Rails specifically, but also Scottish and Southern Electric, and our favourite local utilities company, and increasingly we hope with Oxfordshire County Council. Nice to see Lewis there. Hi, Lewis. And to catalyse that, it's not just DEFRA that's doing that, although they are a junior debt participant in the capital structure. That we are also taking senior debt and equity that will be paid back over the duration of the project from other private investment. And that is an ugly schematic of how it works. The landowners are participants in this project. Obviously, they are also shareholders in this special purpose vehicle, ELI, even though landscape recovery, SPV, special purpose vehicle. It is a vehicle that is built to handle the funds and disseminate them to the necessary parties. The Northeast Cotswold Farmer Cluster, NECFC, CIC, in the bottom left corner, that is effectively the service provider for the work. They will be running all the contracts. They will be running all the monitoring, evaluation, and they are the workhorse, if you like. ELR Limited, Evenlode Landscape Recovery Limited, is a where the funds flow, and that means that we can distribute the any profits, any dividends to the landowners. So there's upside felt across the whole project, and hence driving this sort of determination to capture more carbon, store more water, improve biodiversity more, and so on and so forth. And we've also structured it so it's not just the landowner that gets all the cream in this situation, and we're not trying to drive tenants off. There is a structure where if you are a tenant, you are the beneficiary of the DEFRA funding piece, and then any upside capital, any dividend upside is split between landowner and farmer. So we very much respect the quarter or so farms that we're in that are our tenants. We are currently getting land manager support forms signed off, so that is what we require for the big DEFRA contract, and that comes along with all the existing schemes that farmers might be in, whether that's Environment Bank or it's a SFI, the Sustainable Farming Incentive government scheme, and that will get us over the line, along with a very, very long and complicated title search due diligence by DEFRA and the lawyers, which, as always, is very expensive but necessary. We've created one SBI single business identifier that is something that unifies all of those parcels into one, if you like, contractable body with DEFRA. It's the simplest way to make sure there's no double funding with the RPA, the Rural Payments Agency. And then each landowner becomes a shareholder, as I mentioned, and that's limited. That's created through a shareholder agreement, and that gives us the protection as a vehicle to be able to step in if a particular habitat is not being achieved, or with all our best intentions, we need to help out, and vice versa. That also limits the exposure of the farm to the investment that we're getting as well, or the risk on that investment. And then each parcel, each title will have that covenant on it for the duration of the project. So, for instance, if that's a 30-year BNG project, biodiversity net gain BNG, it will be a 30-year covenant on that title, and that gives again the security that the habitat will be created, maintained, and deliver the services over the duration of that project life. And if, more importantly, if the land gets sold, it goes with it. So now into how we actually operationalize this. We're going to be working alongside railway lines and so on, where we're going to need framework contractors and design to the nth degree, and so on and so forth. So we've been working with Atkins all the way through this, but there's also others, whether it's Jacobs or Mott or JBA or whoever, that will be important, have an important role. But as we all know, the less we can use them, the better, because they're all bloody expensive. So we will be very much leaning towards those local specialists as well, where we can, be that with woodland creation, pond creation, field corner bunds, whoever. However, that's where we're really going to be looking to partners for support and help, and then farmers themselves will be contracting for delivery on other farms. So if you're cutting a meadow for green hay to establish one somewhere else for a forage harvester, and you've got a muck spreader, you will probably be quite busy, and we will be leaning into that quite a bit. There's quite a lot that do groundworks and so on and so forth. Fencing contractors amongst the farms, they're all diversifying in this sort of space, so we will be looking to the other farmers to contract on farms. And then the actual delivery of the work that's not ordinary husbandry of a crop or livestock would also constitute contracting on their own farms. So, for instance, if they decided to do the green hay meadow species-rich meadow establishment, they can contract them. We will contract them to do it on their own farms, or if they choose to do their own fencing. So that's the structure. We're very much hoping to do more of the 2, 3, and 4 than number 1 in that front, to keep the skills and generation of work local. And then how we phase that, hydrologically, it makes lots of sense to start at the top and work our way down, but that's also where we've got a lot more proof of concept and design concepts underway. So the one that we've been working on quite closely with Network Rail is at Matthews Mill to there's 4 farms local to there that we've been working with the scheme. But of course, there's the Bleddington catchment that the ECP has been very involved with. We've brought in quite a key new farm to that mix quite recently. So we'll be looking to project partners with particular skill sets in that part of the world. But we want to go out to those that already know these sub-catchments and tackle sub-catchment at a time with those that know it best. And likewise, up at Susan Cook, we've got some interesting work underway there as well on Longborough. So that's how we anticipate over the 5 years phasing it. And then the almost inverse of that for woodland creation. So the red phase 3 over on the Dawn and the Glyne will be our priority phase for woodland creation on when we start. And we've already got quite detailed conversations with Scottish and Southern Electric on the support for that. And then phase 2 is 2, and then phase 3 will be the top of the Evenlode. And we know, Mark, I can see you on my screen, that particular region is going to take perhaps longer, hence why it's phase 3. It doesn't mean that we're going to start it last. We'll probably start it all at the same time, but in terms of getting trees in ground, it's probably going to take a longer process to make sure everyone's happy that the right trees going in the right place. And that is the flyover of the Evenlode Landscape Recovery Project for now. I have really skipped through it. Any questions, please do ask Nick.
Tim, I'm struck by just the immense amount of work that's had to go into it just to get you this far, and the organization and the admin. This is a massive endeavor, so well done for getting it so far. Questions? Carol, I can see a question flagged.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Tim. No, that's fine. Don't worry. That was really interesting. Thank you. I've got absolutely loads of questions, but I'll limit myself to just 2 for now. One is, have you got ideas around the timeframes of when you plan to kind of start with each of those phases? And the second one is around the interaction with the ECP and kind of how you see that working throughout the project.
So question 1, in theory, we were signing in January 2025. We had 2 years of funding to do the development of this, and we submitted back in end of September, early October, all our plans, went through due diligence, 2 rounds of it, and we didn't actually sit down to get we did 4 days of negotiation with DEFRA, and we finally got one on the 28th of February. So that, in theory, is when we could start. It's taken until the spending review for DEFRA to actually gear up, because they were worried they were going to lose all that money, but thankfully it's been ring-fenced and it's all safe. Now that we've had the spending review in this month, we are now just about to get over the line. Still a couple of contractual concerns, but we had chalked the 18th of July to be signing. It's probably going to be the end of July, but I'm off for 2 weeks in August, and I really wanted it before then, but it'll probably be when I'm away. And so that's the timescale in terms of when that the funding will start effectively. The phasing, the capital works in theory will be done in 5 years, and that's all phased and profiled out. The 20-year duration is the project, but of course a woodland creation and a woodland carbon code you model out for 55 years, and BNG is 30 years, and so on and so forth. So the DEFRA participation is 20 years, and you can't take any other funding on that from DEFRA. So does that answer your question on that? And then the second question, how we work with ECP specifically, as it has not been a legal entity, it's I've always thought of it as a group of partnership of organisations that we will end up with sort of bilateral contracts with. But the hope is, and the logic is that the community of the catchment partnership feels that they are also very involved in all their respective components, that we've got the shared goals and so on. And I don't see a reason why we couldn't achieve that. I mean, in the next few years, things might change, and actually it might be much easier to subcontract a whole chunk of the work to a legal entity that is the ECP. But actually, for the foreseeable future, it will be with the partners themselves. And for instance, with water quality, there is a line item in there on water monitoring and so on. And so there's a conversation there that we need to restart.
Yeah, no, thank you. I wasn't meaning it in a self-serving purpose. I was just generally meaning in terms of how as a group we all think ECP and ELRP should be kind of collaborating to make sure we know. Yeah, I suppose just through these meetings is a big part of it as well, just making sure we're aware of plans and things, what everyone's working on, because they're very much shared goals.
Yeah, just before anyone else comes out, I'll say that Anne and I had a lovely meeting for a week ago about the Water Restoration Fund, and so of course there's going to be a huge amount of beneficial overlap in some of this work. So I think there's a lot to be said for it complementing, and not there's no need for there's no competing there. It's about how we make sure that absolutely right that we align what we're doing, so we're not all running around busy pools duplicating effort. And I think the water quality testing piece is a clear, if we're using the same methods, we don't have to be doing it in the same place, but as long as we're using the same methods, it just builds that evidence for everyone's purposes.
Thanks for those thoughts, Tim. And I totally concur. Just staying abreast of what everybody's doing is a job in its own right almost. And I think the catchment partnership actually really helps just bring groups together and helps everybody keep some sort of overview of all the stuff that's going on, which I think is really valuable. I did have one question of my own, which is, are there other groups around the country on the same track as you, or are you unique here?
We actually had the Darrant Landscape Recovery Project came up a couple of days ago. They haven't submitted their plans yet, so they're quite behind. But they're another multi-farm landscape recovery project. It's actually run by the Kent Wildlife Trust.
Right.
The vast majority of the round one pilots are being led by National Trust, Wildlife Trust, RSPB, Wildfowl Wetlands Trust. So the charity sector. There are, I think, 2 that are farmer group led. We are the biggest, and we are the second to have submitted. The first to submit was Boothby, which is the Nattergal NEP project. It's near Peterborough. It's a single estate. So I keep saying it's not really landscape recovery, it's a single estate. But they paved the way for the rest of us. They took a lot of the hits in getting through it.
Good, thank you very much. Vaughan?
Yeah, hi Tim. The finance model looks like one of the labyrinthine water company models that we're all so familiar with. And I'm interested really, I suppose, in the role of equity in that. So could you give a comment about the kind of returns that those private equity investors will expect from this? And also, are you able to share with us the involvement of Thames Water in the project? And what kind of funding it's likely to put in, and any projects specifically it might be working on. I'm particularly interested in nature-based solutions, particularly with the direction of travel of Cunliffe and Ofwat, and the way that the water companies are beginning to use nature-based solutions for cover for some of their more embedded problems with their sewage treatment works. So that is a concern.
So answer to the first question was around about the sort of high single digits, 10% return. Answer to your second question, nothing that the partnership doesn't already know that we've been working on, for instance, the constructed wetlands, although it's looking increasingly like that might be dead in the water, which for all the reasons you already know. In terms of other nature-based solutions, as I mentioned to you in Farm Ed, the logic that we have in working with Thames Water is if we are failing to achieve our condition assessments on our targets for things like floodplain meadow restoration, or specifically things that will be impacted by poor water quality, floodplain grazing marsh, so on. We feel there is a role for a water company to compensate that potential loss of income that we will be unable to achieve. So we are in dialogue with them. We haven't got a specific project, if you like, lined up on that front. And then the other one is we have Network Rail, Oxford County Council, hopefully Pete as well up in Gloucestershire, and Thames Water, all looking at the natural flood management modelling and interventions we're doing. It would be unfair for any one entity to shoulder all the weight of the cost of natural flood management measures without other participants or other beneficiaries acknowledging their benefit from it. So my point being, if there is going to be benefit from an NFM scheme by a water company asset, we would like to see that benefit paid for. I am very acutely aware that this could end up a greenwashing exercise, and I'm pretty sure that everyone on the screen will prevent that being a greenwashing exercise. And so it's about everyone has confidence in what the outcomes will be as a result of the interventions we do, and that it isn't just overstating or claiming things that aren't actually going to happen. But I don't know if that is a very woolly way of answering the question, but that's the line.
I mean, the idea of compensation for Thames Water paying the damages they do to floodplain meadows is fine as far as it goes. But is it going to be called compensation, and is that compensation going to be available then to all farmers in Thames Water's region outside of the farm cluster? I mean, are they specifically going to call it compensation? I mean, that's how you just described it. I mean, that's an interesting concept, and one that we might explore as a pressure group to roll that out across the catchment. Then clearly that's going to be hugely expensive for Thames Water and quite interesting for some of their senior management team. And 10% return for equity investors, you can borrow cheaper than that, Tim.
How do you eat an elephant? You've got to start somewhere, right? And I think if there was precedent of other schemes that we could point to, maybe, but we don't have that. And the scale that we've got, that's how we're going to start. That's our approach. I mean, I know we want it cheaper, and we've got people telling us we want it cheaper, but we also have to get underway, and we can't let perfection be the barrier to progress. We need private industry to start investing in nature-based solutions. Otherwise, the public purse simply can't carry the weight, and we'll just end up with flooded communities, nature dilapidation, so on and so forth, runaway climate change. So we're just trying to get a concept turned to reality with the key partners in the room.
Sense there's a conversation that could go on for a long time there, but thanks both of you for your contributions on that. I'm going to suggest, just in view of the time that we have for the meeting, that we'll leave that particular topic there, and I'm going to ask Pete.
Frank, sorry, can I just interrupt, because Pete's had his hand up for absolutely ages, and I don't think you've managed to see it.
No, I was just coming to Pete actually, and I was going to apologise to him because he's had his hand up for absolutely ages and been patiently waiting. So, Pete.
No worries, thank you. It was just about and you sort of touched on it a bit there, Tim, how you plan to monitor and assure the results of the NFM measures to a degree of sufficient granularity that the likes of Network Rail, etc., will have confidence to invest. Is it modelling? Is it sort of, how do you plan to kind of carry that out?
I would love to set up a call with you and anyone else that wants to join, where we could really do a deep dive on this, because it is an answer that we've obviously been having to a question we've had to answer quite a lot over the last year or so. So it's a lot of it's started off model based. We've looked specifically on the Network Rail side at the damage to assets and the mitigation of that damage, and worked with them with quite a fine tooth comb on that with Miles from Atkins. But actually, the thing which is glaringly missing in all of this is any kind of governance in MRV and NFM. MRV, monitoring, reporting, and verification, that you might have built something, but you've got to be able to maintain it and stop it silting up and blah 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 if you want it to last in the long run. And NFM, natural flood management. So the Rivers Trust, which I know the ECP works at Little Stock Brook, have been put on the NFM hub, natural flood management hub, which is an EA Rivers Trust project, I believe. We would look to really lean into that, and actually we're talking to, I don't know if you've come across Rebalance Earth, which is a pension fund that's been working with local authorities to raise money for natural flood management specifically, and between them, us, and a couple of other parties, we are looking to create that governance structure to hold these schemes to account for the duration of their, well, into perpetuity, arguably. And then there are things like the Woodland Water Code, which is an opportunity, but it's not at maturity yet, to be able to get that sort of premium for a woodland planting. We worked really hard on DEFRA underwriting some natural flood management payments, but they're, we all know there's a benefit, but it's coming up with a consensus of how much benefit and when is the challenge, and they chickened out of committing to that. But we have an alternative mechanism with DEFRA, which around sediment capture, which uses Farmscaper as almost a proxy for that NFM. But we would love that conversation, Pete, and it's so important that we don't recognise the value of NFM as a capital scheme, but actually it's the moment it's in the ground, it's maintained and it's running, it's not for it's there, it needs to be paid for, otherwise the farmer will want to put something else in there that does give them a revenue.
Can we capture that as an action from this meeting? Are you okay to do that? And who's going to take the lead on getting that meeting going?
I'm happy to take that lead, and I would welcome Lewis joining that as well if he's available. I think he might have dropped off actually, but just so we're doing cross boundaries as well.
Yeah, and I'm speaking to Rebalance Earth next week as it happens, so yeah, it's probably good timing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Tim's got to go on holiday, so don't scupper that. But maybe if in the next couple of months you can get a meeting going on that, that sounds like a positive thing. And do we need a specific wording of the action point for the note, or do you think you've got enough to go on there?
I think we've probably got enough to go on from that. Thanks very much.
Super, good. Right, well, we've had a good chew on this topic. Any last questions? I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'm going to say let us leave that there, and everyone's